Now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. But to do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And welcome to the hallowed halls of the University of Logic, better known as Cristiano's Conservatory, correcting convoluted conversations. This is Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, on 1170 KFAQ, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. Good evening, everyone. I've come to a conclusion.
Really?
I've come to a conclusion.
A conclusion?
Yeah, that
wow.
I think funny.
No,
I know. I think
funny.
No matter who I don't think regular like most people.
No, you're not normal, is what you're saying.
No, I tell you, it just started. I think when I was in grade school. It may have been kindergarten or something like that.
That you found out you were not normal.
Yeah, I'm not normal. I knew this all along, and for the longest time, I always thought I was not up to par and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My problem is that I never really understood what other people were saying because it didn't make any sense. So I thought I was just stupid, Now, people still call me stupid to this day, but that's another story. But I'll give you an example. When I was in grade school, the teacher said, she read the story, Jack and Jill went up the hill, right?
To fetch a pail of water.
Yeah. Something like that. That's what they said. That's what book says that. Who knows? So like a jerk kid, I go up to the teacher, I go, hey, teacher, do me a favor. I said, tell me, why do you think they really went up that hill?
Uh-oh, Joe.
And she got so upset.
Yeah.
she called my mother.
She
said,
heard that bad
your
joke
son,
too, huh?
Your son is
Joe Cristiano.
Is a pervert. They dragged me home. My mother beat the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And she said, don't ever ask a question like that. I said, I want to know what they're doing up there. Yeah. She said, none of your business what they're doing up there. She said, the teacher says they're getting water. They're getting water.
That's
I said,
right.
Quite frankly, I don't think they're getting water. And that was the start of it. And
what age were you?
I don't know. It was 8 years old, 10 years old.
This is before Howard Stern too.
No, said this is 1950.
Before Howard Stern too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I still want to know, what are they doing up there?
What are Jack and Jill
You think I'm going to run up a hill with a girl to fetch some water?
Yeah.
I don't think so. But I don't want to go there because this program we should be talking about serious
This is a
stuff.
family show.
This is a family show. And of course, perverts are invited. Unfortunately, I'm here.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you another thing. This was when we were first introduced to history. And by the way, what grade are you first introduced to history, world history?
Oh.
Is that in grade
Third
school?
grade, third.
High school?
Geography was always first.
Yeah, third grade.
Yeah, first, third.
Oh, third
or fourth
I remember
grade.
it was very. Now I'm not joking. This is the truth.
Very basic. Very basic.
Here I am. I'm sitting in the class. I never forget. I can tell you where I was sitting. I was sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
In next to the last row. The last row, but in the front seat. And I'm looking at the teachers talking, looking at has a map on the wall and whatever, and talking about the superpower of the United States and how Britain was a superpower at one time, and France was, and Spain, and then back
Italy,
a couple of century ago, it was China and all that. And the first thing that came to mind, and I kid you not, this is the God's honest truth. May God strike my agent dead if I'm lying. I tell you, But
my gosh,
maybe he deserves it. I don't know. But that's another side. I don't want to go there. But the first thing that comes to my mind, talking about going up with the pail of water thing. First thing that comes to mind, is I wonder when we are going to decline, what's going to cause it, and who's going to be next. Now, there's the very first thing that came to mind. No one asked the question.
Nobody.
No one. And I'm sitting there, and remembering the pail of water thing,
So you didn't
I'm not going to
answer,
ask this question because I'm a pervert, perverts don't ask questions. And I'm sitting there, and I'm going, and I'm dying to ask this question. Like, all right, All right, when are we going to decline and lose our status? And I was a kid. I mean, I was a young kid at the time. And to this day, I regret asking that question. And here we are, right? Here we are, 60 years later, 60 years later, right?
I thought it's 75 or 80 years later. How old are you?
What? Oh, I can't tell you. I won't stand a chance. If you knew how old I was, I wouldn't stand a chance with you, you know. But, so here we are, 60 years later, and we are experiencing exactly what she talked about all the other countries that went downhill and that lost their position as a world power,
Yeah.
right? And and I think about that so much. It's just like, I really wish I was like a carpenter. A carpenter is an easy job because, you get a piece of wood, if a cabinet's, 12 inches by 30, you measure it, everything is exact, you know what kind of wood to use. There's no question. Everything that I do requires a lot of mental stimulation and has so many facets to it that it's fascinating.
How do you
but
ever
it's
get anything
exhausting.
done then?
I don't. I do this all day long. No, ask my wife. She says, "Don't you ever
Go
sleep?"
round in
I said,
circles.
"I can't. I'm always reading stuff." No, really, and that's a real problem because most people spend most of their time doing that. They go to work, right, just to pay taxes. They come home, they turn on the television,
Yeah,
right,
of course.
And
Yeah.
then if someone mentions something out of the ordinary, it's like, they don't want to discuss it. Life is worth living and all this other crap that they tell you. But this is the stuff that I think about, and I still want to know why they went up that hill,
Wow.
I still want to know what that. But seriously, but I think we should really look back now. We should think back, back in the 1950s, where we were the world's powerhouse. That's because there was no manufacturing around the world. Everyone was bombed at World War II, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, And now all of a sudden, the shift is from, as you know, from the West to the East, and people don't want to recognize it, and we don't want to do anything about it. And what we are doing, we are fighting it. And the worst thing you can do is fight a losing battle.
How are we fighting it?
How are we finding it?
I
Well,
think
we're fighting it in that we want to maintain the illusion that we are the world's
We're in
number
denial.
one
That's what we are.
currency.
We're
Yeah,
in denial.
that's a better way to put it.
We are
Yeah.
in denial.
We're denial.
Instead of saying, "Hey, we should not be the world's reserve, the world's reserve currency. We should not be around." Now we could be. We should not have ships in every port in the Black Sea. We're going to talk a little bit later about that. We have Exana here from Kiev, from Ukraine, and she's going to talk to us about that. And we don't talk about those things. We don't want to recognize those things. Anyway, all right. I want to rant before we have Exana on. And
You
by the
haven't
way-
been ranting?
No, I haven't ranted
Oh,
yet.
now
No. All of you, by the way, can go to hell. Every one of you.
All right.
Folks, whatever you do, never hire zombies.
Yeah,
I tell you, I got all
zombies,
zombies
that's right,
over here. But next week is our guest. We're going to have Andy Sutton as an economist. He's going to come in next week.
He's great.
Absolutely
He's
fantastic,
great.
right?
We love
the
Andy.
week after that. Now, the second half hour, today, we have Karen Hudes. And she is the former legal counsel for the World Bank, and I'll read her resume, resume actually,
bio,
yeah,
yeah.
bio later. Phenomenal woman, I'll tell you, I'm intimidated. I'm afraid of this woman, and she's a whistleblower. And boy, what she has to say will blow your mind. I tell you, it's amazing. It's going to be an amazing interview, right? But in 2 weeks from now, I was hoping to get a philosophy professor who's writing a book.
That would be interesting.
Philosophy on world events.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
and we had a nice conversation at Starbucks.
And he's going to be on in 2 weeks, huh?
Yeah, well, I asked him too. He said, well, and we get along really well. In fact, most of what he said I agree with. There's some things that I'd like to challenge him on. And I said, I'd love to have you on my program. I said, no, at first I said, what I'd like to do, I said, why don't you invite me to your class? I'd like to speak to your students.
There you go. Yeah.
Basically, he said,
Ain't gonna happen.
never going to happen. Number one.
Did you ask the Jack and Jill question again?
Yeah.
It bothers me when people were afraid of me. And then I said, I'm fine. I said, then why don't you come on my program? He said, I'll have to listen to your program first.
He's not coming on. No.
Yeah, I go, no, I really want him to come on. He's very interesting. He's very insightful, very educated, and there's not going to be an argument or that. There's some things we probably
Is
will
he
disagree
listening
with,
tonight?
Right? I hope he's listening tonight.
Well, he ain't coming on after hearing all this.
He's not going to come on. No, I want him to encourage for him to come on.
Come on,
okay?
Professor.
All right.
All right,
Now,
well, we'll
here's my rant. This is my
here's the
rant for the
rant.
day, right? I cannot no longer stand listening to Janet Yellen.
Who?
Yellen, the Federal Reserve Chair.
Oh, God.
No, she's
I
not
forgot.
yelling. That's her name.
Yeah.
Stalin.
Yeah. She,
Janet,
sounds important she's in my life. I don't remember her name.
she says things like the Federal Reserve is trying to maintain a 2% inflation rate, and to maintain, a growing economy. And I think to myself, again, I'm thinking, and I go, going back to school, I took economics. I took a couple of economics courses. Nowhere did I remember reading in any chapter, Eco 101, 102, any of those courses, or 202, where in order to have a healthy economy, you needed a 2% inflation rate. Now, just think of the insanity of what she's saying. This woman's insane. She's an absolute insane woman. If 2% inflation is good, right? That means when I go to the store, if something was, let's say, $2, I'm not going to buy it because it should be $2.04, right? Because that'd be a 2% inflation rate. Now, would I be happy that it went from $2 to $2.04? No, that would probably discourage me. As the price goes up, it discourages me from buying it.
Yeah, you'd find a reason not to buy it.
Yeah. Now, you take the computer industry, right? What happens when products become more available because the price comes down because of technology and competition, innovation, and
supply and demand.
Yeah, supply and the competitiveness of the marketplace.
Yep.
Right? Prices come down. They find efficiencies in the marketplace, in how to produce, in how to market, and whatever. And they squeeze down as much as they can, right? And then that benefits the consumer. So when you can buy something that at one time was $500 and now it's $200, you're apt to buy it. That increases sales, right?
You can buy two things now.
But to Yellen, that's bad.
But that has to do with the free market, though.
Yeah, that's bad. We should have inflation. What was $500 should be now $540. That's good for the economy. The woman's a madman. A mad woman. And she's a lunatic.
She's just a woman.
We didn't say that.
No,
I
wait. Bernanke was the same way. Greenspan was the same
Playing
way.
it safe here.
All
The
the
woman
same
said
way.
that.
In other words, inflation is good. In other words, I want prices to go up so I can spend more of my money on the same product. Let's stop for a break. I want to expand on this subject of this 2% inflation. Now, I've checked my economics books. I've checked everywhere. I've checked with well-known economists. I mean, noted economists, and I said, why do we need to? They said, no, we don't. I mean, everyone's saying, no, it's bogus. Now, here we have, listening to Yellen, all of these people in elected office, most of whom are attorneys. I mean, so you can't be too book stupid to be an attorney. It's pretty tough to at least pass the test. So you've had to go to school. You had to take a couple of economics courses at least, right? Now, if you go to college, you got to take economics courses, right? And so you have this room filled with people, all of whom have had at least basic economics, many of whom have had advanced economics, etc. Not one raises their hand and says, "What the hell are you talking about?" Not one. No, dude, just think of that.
Yeah,
Not one
true.
person, even afterwards, I mean, because they want to be respectful, say, she says it's 2%. This woman's got something stuck in her brain. There's no such thing. But no one everyone says, oh, yes, we're looking for 2%. Everyone agrees with her. No one disagrees, and everyone is educated, should know better. No one says anything. Then when we go to our Congress, right, we go to our Senate, we go to the executive branch, everyone else, what do they say? They all agree with her. No one is saying, where did she come up with this 2%? It's like she invents this stuff, And now I know why she's saying that. I'm not going to get into that because it doesn't make any difference. The fact is there's no substance from which she makes that comment, and there's not one person in office, short of the old Ron Paul, who would say that's bogus. That has nothing to do with our economy. In fact, that's hurtful for our economy. If anything, we want to see prices go down, like we see computer prices go down, because then people have an incentive to buy, And yet, if you look at it, and when you have everyone agreeing with from a corrupt banker saying something stupid, and then everyone, all the elected officials agreeing, what's your conclusion? What's your conclusion? They're all corrupt. I mean, if she's telling something that makes no sense, right, has no validity at all, and everyone is sort of tacitly giving her approval and saying, yes, and oh, yes, we're at 2%, blah, 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 blah. That means that they're all on the program, right? They're all lying to us. And either that or they're incredibly as stupid as she is.
No, they just don't want to deal with issues. They just want to go to school or whatever they're doing without dealing with any issues.
But these are the people that we elected in office. Yeah. No, I agree but you'd think they would be 5% of the people. 5% would be saying, hey, wait a minute, that makes no sense. No one. Zero. El Zippo. Right? And then the American public, we go home, we listen to that on the news, right? No one contests it. Then we turn on Dancing with the Stars. We go to bed. Everything is just fine.
Hunky-dory, isn't it, Joe?
It's a hunky-dory world, You want to know why I'm going nuts?
Work, buy, consume, die.
I was the only one once, and I still want to know why they went up the hill to fetch a pail of water.
Of course you do.
And no one's asking the question.
They're bringing a bucket of water to dump on you. You're so hot.
Oh. I know. I just can't say. All right. I'm not going to. But understand that no one challenges even the dumbest thing that is said and things that are economically wrong. You look at an economics chart, there's no such thing as 2% inflation equals a good economy. Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. In fact, if anything, the exact opposite is true. We have someone on the line? Okay. Who do we have, Lynn? Who do we have on the line?
Lloyd from Henrietta.
Oh, Lloyd, come on in. All right, Lloyd, what you got?
How's it going, Lloyd?
Joe, I just wanted to comment on that 2% inflation.
Yeah.
It's a threefold scheme is what it is. You see, they keep pushing this idea of 2% in inflation, because if you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth to the people. They get conditioned to that thing.
Okay.
The other part of it is that they're operating a pyramid scheme that will collapse without an increase in money supply continually. And then the third part of it is, the third fold is, if you steal just a little bit at a time, people don't notice. It's kind of like if you go over to your neighbor's house and steal an apple off a tree, he ain't going to complain too much, and you could walk up there in front of him and just pull one off. It's no big deal.
Right.
But if you go over there with a bucket and start loading up, he's probably going to object.
That's right. Okay, I agree with you. That means that they're all crooked. Provided they don't take too much at any point in time, everyone should be happy. Lloyd, thank you very much. I got to hang because I got this gal from Kiev here. She wants to make a few comments. Thank you very much for calling. Appreciate it. All right, Oksana. All right, we have a gal here. A guest from, I guess you are from the Ukraine, right? And we just like your take on what is going on today, with the East-West tensions, etc., the riots in Ukraine. What's happening from your perspective?
Oh, my. Where do I begin? Anyways.
You got 5 minutes, so don't worry about it.
Very good. Well, I think Russia and Ukraine was always together and always is together. Only difference is that back when they had communist people, everybody that did not agree with communists, they moved to Ukraine. They had a chance to do that, but they're still the same. They're still standing by in case anything happens. And they're just checking how many people are going to change their opinion on what was back in those days. How many people are going to willingly lose their freedom. And
you mean the I'm off mic, but you mean the
Go ahead.
the people there who are in the Ukraine are the Russian people that are there is who you were talking about? That they went to Ukraine to escape originally the communism?
Yes.
Okay, that's the kind of Russians you're talking about.
Yes. So I think they're just checking on how many people gonna lose their freedom and agree with the back where they are, like the communist or whatever they are, and they're still not agreeing with it. So they're fighting against it to see how many, and there's still too many people that don't agree. They don't want to lose their freedom. They don't want to go back to the red shirts, red ties, and all that, and say, we belong to the government. We do what government say. We work for government. We do everything they tell us to, and we will be happy and safe.
All right, now, but the people in office right now, the people in elected office in the Ukraine, are who? Are those the red shirt guys?
Yes.
All right.
And there are the ones that corrupt.
Those are corrupt. Those are the guys who would prefer a more communist form of government.
Yes.
Right. And the people who are then rioting are those people saying, no, we want to be more of a free country.
No,
right?
we moved once. We can't move anywhere else.
Yeah.
But we do not agree with not having no freedom.
All right. Who put the people in office in Ukraine that are there now?
Russia.
No, the new ones.
No, the new people, the people in office now, the red shirts, if you will. Who put them in office? Are they Western? Is there Western influence there, or is that Eastern influence?
They're from, more to the Moscow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So does the West have some legitimate gripe in saying leave it alone, or what is the West? I don't even understand what our position is there.
Yeah, I'm a little confused about it too.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you.
No, it's not about anything else, but still back to the freedom. It's again, freedom, not to be the communist, not to be that. So
right.
Those people, they're not in charge, never been in charge, and never will be. They will never sit in the office.
Right.
They run away. They don't want a government. They don't want them to say, check in, check out, check in, check out.
Right. But those are the people that are in office right now.
They are.
Yeah.
But once they tell them what to do or this and this and tell them, do what I say, they say, we don't want to do what you say.
But why did this come up now? Why didn't this disrupt 10 years ago?
Why is Russia invading them right now?
Well, because now it has nothing to do with freedom. Now it has to do with World War III. Now they're going to try to get together, and it's going to be the biggest country again. So they just get together. They used to just stand by and let Ukrainian people just do whatever, because that's a lot of people that did not agree with government. So they let them just go away. But they're all standing by. In case of anything, they're all going to get together again and have the biggest country again, and that creates a threat to other countries.
Oksana, what is the Ukrainian people's, what is their expectation for America? What do they want the Americans to do?
I don't think any of them shook a president's hand, so they really don't care what America does. We're too big to care, to a point. We got gas, we got all of it, we got crops. We really don't really care. America's the one that cares. America wants our stuff, thinking we're small. We're still as big as we were.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And so how do you see this thing playing out, just from what do you suspect is going to happen here?
Well, I think they're going to, first it's a chaos. You have to create chaos before you do anything. You have to confuse people. You have to have people, oh my God, my cousins, oh this and this.
Right.
Next thing is they are going to go Russia against U.S., something that nobody wanted to do. Nobody agreed on that. But they're going to do that in Middle East.
Oh, so you
they're
think
going to say, oh, we go against each other. Then they're going to say, oh, no, now Russia and America paired up together. We're fighting Middle East. They're fighting each other in the Middle East.
Boy, I don't see anything good coming out.
No, they're going to fight. That's going to be.
When you say they, who are you saying they?
U.S. and Russia.
Russia. They're not going to fight each other?
They will.
They will fight each other.
In Middle East, most likely.
Okay.
Middle East. Like Israel? Is Israel has anything to do with it?
More like a Pakistan terrorist. where it's all dry and you can bomb it and you can do all that.
Right. So what we have is that we may have the embryonic stage of World War III. You're saying?
Oh yes, it's on. I
Wow.
believe hardcore that it's on. It's going on. They're just throwing it off on Russia, Ukraine.
Okay. All right, we gotta go for a hard break now. Don't go away, anyone. Here's our hard break. We will be back, and we'll have Karen Hudes, from the World Bank. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back at Liberty Talk Radio here on 1170 KFAQ. We are so pleased to have with us as our guest this evening, Karen Hudes, and she studied at the Yale Law School, economics at the University of Amsterdam, worked at the U.S. Export Bank from 1980 to 1985, legal department of World Bank from 1986 to 2007. She established the Non-Governmental Organization Committee of International Law, section of the American Bar Association, the Committee on Multilateralism and the Accountability of International Organizations of the American Branch of the International Law Association. She was with the World Bank, and she was the legal counsel for the World Bank, and a whistleblower. And Ms. Hudes, are you on the line?
I certainly am. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And let me be honest with you. I feel so inadequate at this point, and I am absolutely intimidated by your resume. So you don't mind if I sit here and I shake in my chair, do you?
I don't mind, but there's no reason.
Oh, boy. Well, I thank you so much for taking your time to be on our program. Our listeners are probably more attuned to what has been going on and the direction that you are going in than most stations, and that's why I'm very pleased to have you on our program. For the sake of simplicity, and maybe for my own mind, could you just give us a little bit of a short, brief summary background of where you are now and where you're going?
Yes, and I'm so delighted that you're having me on your show. So it's a great privilege to be able to speak to your listeners who are, interested to find out what's going on. And the very first thing to say, which I'm sure people understand, is that you have to listen to the Internet radio to find out what's really going on, right, because the mainstream media is owned and controlled by a huge conglomerate banking cartel they made it their business to buy up all the media. And so the best way to understand what's going on is in The Wizard of Oz, where you've got the wizard who's behind this booth. The wizard is a banking cartel, and we know a lot about that cartel because three mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Switzerland, used mathematical modeling tools on data who owns the 43,000 transnational companies whose shares are traded on all the capital markets of the world. And they found out that when you talk about the banks, it's not like 10 or 11 too big to fail banks. They're all one bank. What those crooks did was they took the same directors and put them on the boards of the different companies so that the directors could all coordinate. That's called interlocking directors. Their article is called The Network of Control, and this network decided that they were going to buy up all the media. So if you go back to The Wizard of Oz, where we are is, Toto the dog that pulls back the curtain? Yeah. There's a group of whistleblowers, and I'm part of that group, and we have pulled back the curtain, and people are now looking at this banking cartel, the wizard, and the wizard is saying, don't look at me, and points up to the screen, which is the mainstream media telling you about horrible things. First they wanted to have World War III in Syria, then they wanted to have World War III in the Ukraine. All of that is a bunch of propaganda. Right. The fact of the matter is that people are onto them, and so we didn't have a world war in Syria. And we do understand that what's going on in the Ukraine is just them, making a lot of noise and commotion. And so we're not having any of that. So that's what's going on. What's going on is we're at that aha moment. Enough people understand that something different is going on. And the best way to understand about what is different that's going on is because when I was at the World Bank, they call it the knowledge bank. There was a lot wrong, don't get me wrong, because there was corruption from that banking cartel. And so, but there was a very accurate tool called a power transition model developed by a political science guru named Jacek Kugler, who developed this model for the Defense Department and then came to the World Bank with it. And whenever there's a disagreement between this, it uses game theory modeling. Whenever there's a disagreement between the game theory model and the analyst, the model wins hands down. Now, there's been some people who don't understand the model. They think that you have to put a lot of data in there, that it requires a supercomputer because of it's got to do such drastic number crunching. But actually you don't. What you feed into this model is you go to an expert who has to use their understanding to model, and what you're looking at is in a given scenario, you're looking at who's going to influence a problem. That's called a stakeholder. Where do they stand on the problem? And how powerful are they? And how important is the issue to them? So, for example, the president of the United States may be very powerful, but there's a lot competing for his attention on his desk. So you have to estimate where in the pile of things would that be for that particular stakeholder. Anyway, so I modeled rule of law at the World Bank in 2004, and that model predicted that the U.S. was going to lose the ability to handpick the president of the World Bank. And people may not understand exactly what the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund are. And let me tell you, when I worked there for 20 years, didn't understand what they really were.
Oh, my goodness.
I'll tell you why. I knew that it was a big cooperative at the center of the international financial system.
Right.
But what I did not know was that it's sitting on the world's wealth, and it was created by Ferdinand Marcos, who had taken the world's wealth. And I can tell you how that happened. So where we are right now, let's cut to, instead of spending all of our time on, where things were, let's talk about where things are.
Okay.
What happened is there was a spring meeting of the World Bank on the 11th to the 14th of April. And at that meeting, I've been working together with the man who's inherited the authorized signature authority from Ferdinand Marcos. And he and I informed all of the countries in the world that are, it's just about all of them. There's a handful that are not members of the World Bank. So like Taiwan is not a member, Palestine is not a member, but the rest of the countries in the world are members. And so we told all 188 ministers of finance, we told them that this gold is allocated to the beneficiaries. It's a trust fund. It's allocated to all the people on earth. And what we told them was that this gold was going to be minted into coins and replace the paper currencies that are just on the edge of crashing. This banking cartel has been using the world's currencies as a control mechanism, and they wanted to blackmail us into having a one world currency. They were going to use something called special drawing rights. And that isn't going to happen under any circumstances because the BRICS countries, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, right, said they weren't going to have any part of it. And those countries account for 25% of international trade. They're no longer using dollars to pay for the trade among these countries. So the dollar is losing its international reserve currency status. Yeah. That is a huge thing.
Right.
And and because of what people call quantitative easing. By the way, Joe, when you were saying, well, it's all very intimidating, it's not intimidating. They deliberately put these wacky vocabulary words up there to intimidate people. It's done on purpose. And one of the things that I've discovered, and I've been having a lot of words with the legal profession, they create gobbledygook also to ring fence these areas and keep people outside. So there are some very simple things that we can do to make these issues, which everybody needs to be aware of, to make them accessible. And I have been raking the legal profession over the coal because they've been helping this banking cartel maintain this secrecy.
I see.
Most people don't know that when they turn on the boob tube, the television, that they're just getting a bunch of propaganda, that's not the real news.
Right.
And the legal profession is there to perpetuate that with, a lot of skullduggery.
Right.
And the word gobbledygook was invented by one lawyer who was accusing another lawyer of using gobbledygook just to make things complicated unnecessarily. But anyway, so what happened at the spring meetings was that we told the ministers of finance what was going to happen, and the best thing about the World Bank, I was starting to tell you about this power transition model. It predicts, and it's very accurate, it's 90 to 95% accurate. I and another World Bank whistleblower named Elaine Colville, she's Scottish, we got 3 statements up on the UK Parliament website. And when that happened, that model started predicting that we were going to have rule of law. And you can just see how this BRICS coalition, that's part of the rule of law. And so you can see, if you know what to look for, you can see how we are moving in that direction, and we're going to get it. And this gold is there to take this banking cartel back where it belongs, which is nowhere. And you can see, in Dorothy when she throws the water on the witch and the witch melts.
Right.
Well, we have thrown water on the banking cartel, and it's in the process of melting. You can watch it. I can tell you what it is that's happening as that melts. It's the banking cartel has tried to create all kinds of spells to intimidate people. One of the spells that they created that absolutely didn't work, they were planning on having a nuclear device detonate over South Carolina on the 8th of October. It did not happen. What happened instead was Major General Michael Carey, who was commander of the 20th Air Force, responsible for 3 wings of intercontinental missiles, and Vice Admiral Tim Giardina, in charge of the Navy's nuclear arsenal. Those 2 heroes saw to it that device detonated 600 miles off the coast. What happened was, you can tell from the seismograph records, and the Russians intercepted the naval cables. And so the people in the military understand full well who's doing what to whom, and that Russia is actually our ally. I've been on Russia television today 3 times, and there are other allies. One of the most important allies is Germany. Now, what happened with the banking cartel is they refused to give Germany back Germany's gold.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that was back in, what happened first was Germany asked to see their gold. They weren't allowed to. Then they sent their auditors over. The auditors couldn't get through. Then the Treasury Department sent a wacky opinion, which had all kinds of footnotes in it, and they weren't even talking about gold. They were talking about the books describing the schedule. Well, Germany said, if you're going to do that, then why don't you just give me my gold? And then the Federal Reserve System said, well, we're going to take 7 years to do that. Right. And then they didn't even meet the 7-year schedule. So that's an act of war.
That's correct.
And you can see in the Ukraine, Germany had tried to intervene and prevent this polarization and conflict, and the United States deliberately just ruined the agreement that Germany had negotiated. This did not. So Germany and Russia are now becoming polarized away from the Western agreement. So that's blowing up NATO. Now, I have been informing the Department of Defense about this model. They know very well what it means, and I spoke to Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel about it in 2008 when he was still senator for Nebraska. And so they're not getting anywhere. This banking cartel is not going to succeed in crashing the dollar, which is absolutely what they wanted to do. General Martin Dempsey, had 2 town hall meetings. I went to him and I said, you may be a Knight of Malta and you may be representing foreign interests, but you're not going to get away with it. And he's not. There's something called fragging in the military. That man doesn't dare to show his face.
Yeah. Well, at this point, where do we see if the U.S. dollar is losing its prominence, and we can see that, through the BRIC nations. Russia just a couple of weeks ago announced that it will be selling its oil instead of using a petrodollar in its own currency, which is about $1 trillion worth of oil trade a year. We see all this marching down the road. Sometimes you can't stop stuff from happening, and there's a tidal wave, and as much as you want to stop this tidal wave, it's just not you're gonna get wet. Where do you see things going, let's say, within the next 3 months or 6 months, for example, and for people in the United States, what position should we take and what should we be doing? If you could help us out with that.
Yes, where we are is we are at a fork in the road. And people can look to see which fork we take. If we take the gold out of hiding, which it is, it's more gold than people know about. There's 170,500 metric tons, which is allocated in the Bank of Hawaii. I've got these certificates. By the way, everything I'm saying, I have documentation to show, and I'll be happy to give you the links to it, and your listeners can see for themselves. So this gold, as I asked General Dempsey, I said, when you are offered gold to back dollars issued by the Treasury Department, and the difference between dollars issued by the Treasury Department and Federal Reserve notes is that you have to pay interest on your debt with Federal Reserve notes, and you don't have to. So when people are paying their taxes, we just had our little IRS exercise.
Right.
Those dollars are not staying in the United States. They're going right to that banking cartel to pay interest on the debt.
Right.
So if you want to figure out which fork in the road we're taking, you will see whether the Treasury dollars are issued. They've been printed already. They're in something called the Global Collateral Account, which is that big trust fund that his name is Wolfgang Strack. He's a German banker lawyer, has been living in the Philippines for about 25 years. He's actually just about to get on a plane and go to Japan, because Japan is the first country that's going to get their gold. And a lot of it is going to be used to clean up Fukushima. So if that happens, then you'll know which way we're going. And if it doesn't happen, you'll know that we are in for some very, very heavy sledding. But as I said, that power transition model is 90 to 95% accurate. And ever since Elaine Colville and I got our statement up on the UK Parliament website, it was predicting rule of law. And by the way, it's in a committee called the Public Administration Select Committee. What that committee had asked was, they said, how are we doing on evaluating complaints? And I said, well, you're doing a lousy job, because I have already told 2 different committees in the UK Parliament about all of this corruption, and you're sitting on your hands, and we don't have indefinite time.
Right.
And Elaine Colville took them even more to task, because, she's a UK citizen. And what she said was, she could point to chapter and verse where she went to the Prime Minister, where she went to the Ombudsman, where they just ignored her. And what she had reported was that they were fiddling the books at the World Bank, double accounting in her unit. And what I had reported, I was in the legal department, and I knew that I was going to have heavy sledding in the legal department, because the man who had been the longest-serving general counsel, Aaron Brochus, had, he'd basically given me the operation manual to the World Bank before I went there. He told me that the legal department is absolutely the linchpin of the international financial system, because that's where you're either going to have rule of law in the financial system or you're going to have people fiddling with the books. And he said when Robert McNamara became the president of the World Bank, and he was there from 68 for, I guess, about 10 years, he said that's when the World Bank started really going to hell in a handbasket. Yeah. So when Paul Wolfowitz was named, he said whenever you get a president from the Pentagon into the World Bank, you know, it's like the bear with their hand in the cookie jar.
Right.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So so I was waiting for Paul Wolfowitz, and I went to the U.S. Congress, and Senator Lugar wrote 3 letters to the World Bank saying, don't fire this lady, because I was telling him about this power transition model. I was saying that we either have rule of law at the World Bank or the United States loses its leadership and we end up in a ditch, and the ditch would be a currency war.
Right.
Now, I had no idea how corrupt the World Bank was. I had no idea about the banking cartel. This was in 2007 when I started dealing with the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. But I wasn't just dealing with the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. I had been all over the U.S. Congress. And when I was fired, Senator Lugar, Senator Leahy, and Senator Bayh asked for a Government Accountability Office audit. So by now, I have been in front of something called the International Organization of Supreme Audit Institutions. I have been in front of the International Organization of Securities Commissioners. And as far as the legal profession goes, you know, I've been a member of all of these organizations, the American Bar Association, the International Law Association, the American Society of International Law. They just had a big conference. I went to all of the book publishers, and I said, you are going to revise your lies in all of your books, because there has been a colossal cover-up, and it is over. These guys didn't know what they were hearing.
Yeah.
I went to some justices on the World Court. I have been writing to all of the embassies for many, many years. I've been writing to the New York mission for the UN. Don't forget, the World Bank and the IMF have countries on their boards. This is very different from the normal setup for international organizations. It happened because Ferdinand Marcos wanted to have a counterparty to make sure that the world's gold went to the beneficiaries, the world's people. And so when I found Wolfgang Struck, and he found me, and we're telling the whole world that they're not going to steal the world's gold. It's pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, Karen. We only have. This is the fastest 25 minutes that has ever passed by on this program before. You have me mesmerized. First of all, can I receive your commitment to return at a later date so we can talk further on this subject?
Absolutely, and we're going to find out whether Japan.
Yes.
We're going to find out whether Japan takes their gold. And let me tell you how it sits.
Yeah, we have about 40 seconds, and we only have very, very little time left. I'm awfully sorry. I haven't been watching the clock very well.
Stay tuned. That's all we can say.
Yeah.
Stay
now,
tuned.
I just want to confirm one thing. You said there was 105,000 metric tons in Hawaii in gold?
170,500.
Oh, 707. Oh, my goodness.
That's just a piece of it. There's much more gold. We're talking about gold from the Incas, from the Aztecs, from Solomon.
Okay.
All the conquistadors. It's all the world's gold.
Karen,
that's not even talking about the gems.
Okay, Karen, let me ask you this. How would people learn more about what you are doing and the crusade that you're on right now?
Go to my website, www.KAHUDES.net, or just Google me, HUDES. I've been trying to get the word out.
Okay, Karen, I'm sorry, we're going to get shut off any second now, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you so much for being on our program. I will be in contact with you. We are going to give you a lot more time next time because this went much too fast, and there's too many questions that are being left unanswered, and I know you can answer them. Thank you so much for being our guest. It's our privilege that you've been on the show.
Thanks for having me.